Oh man, look at all this sunshine. This is great. It's like 75 out today. It's supposed to storm in a few hours and then continue storming and raining for the rest of the week. But look at this right now. This is great. Got a little something different this week. I put together the end table videos all into one video. So gonna show you that. But we'll be back to regular schedule next week, and we'll have 2 bread recipes. So look forward to that. Here we go. I made this built-in cabinet for a couple last April that are about 30 minutes south of us. It's made out of alder, and then I stained it. And once I installed this, they wanted me to make some end tables for them. But that was at the time when I actually shut the business down for a few months. So this last December, I reached back out to them saying that I was back up and running and if they were still interested. And they had said that they really hadn't looked for anyone else because they knew that they wouldn't find anyone that would do as good a job as me. So that felt good. So here I am designing 4 end tables for them. It's all in the same style as the cabinet that I built, but they're all just a little bit different, as you'll see. I'm using SketchUp for this. And I've been using this program ever since I started designing. It's the easiest, in my opinion, to create fairly simple woodworking designs. Once I get the basic shape down, then I can tweak it to make it just look better. And I'm cutting off the corners just so the grandkids don't poke their eyes out. And now I'm giving it some color, just to make it look more real. And then we've got all 4 of them. And you can see they're all just a little bit different from each other, but they still look like they're from the same line. So after I showed them those initial designs, they came back with a couple options they wanted to see. And so I made those changes to these 2. And yeah, that looks much better. Adding that little curved part down at the bottom was the perfect idea. Morning. So this morning I'm on my way to the lumberyard. It's about an hour and 20 minutes away. It's the biggest lumberyard around here, and I love the place. So going there, and it's a nice drive actually. So there's not too much traffic most of the way. I have to spend about a half hour on a major highway, but I like the drive. Once we get there, I'll do a little video of the selection they have, because they have quite a big selection of exotic woods as well. So, all right, see you in an hour. So all of these woods against the back wall here are all the exotic woods, or mostly exotic woods, and it's pretty expensive for those. You can spend $100 easily for one board, and that's pretty crazy, in my opinion. And then in these sections is the domestic hardwoods, but on the end caps there are some more expensive, really good-looking domestic woods that have some unique grains on them. And then back here is all their slabs, and they've got some really beautiful slabs back here. Look at that one. That's just gorgeous. That would make a really nice table. And there's this stuff right here. It's catalpa wood. I've never heard of it, but it's just so unique. All right, this is what I got. Homeward. This is alder wood. I'm using this for the end tables that I showed the design for a couple weeks ago. I'll be starting this on Monday. Very excited to start this. This is, I get very excited when I start a new project. So the next step is to start sifting through this and figuring out what wood I want to use for which pieces. And that's always a fun job. All right, today we are going through this alder wood to figure out parts for the end tables. So I like to start out with the pieces that are going to be the most important. Obviously, the tops and the door fronts. I just want to make sure I find the most perfect pieces for those parts first, and then go from there. So this is rustic alder wood. So there's a lot of knots and a lot of imperfections. So with this type of wood, I kind of like to highlight the knots because there's going to be knots in the whole thing. So I just want to find the, I guess, the neatest looking knots or the coolest looking knots. I will fill those knots with epoxy, and that really makes them pop. So yeah, like this top one here, this one I've already marked out to cut because this is going to be one of the tops, but you can see there's a knot there, here, and this is a big one. So I'll definitely have to fill that one. So on each piece, so I'll cut these out into 4 sections, and then those will be glued together, and that'll produce the top. So each section has a knot in it on this one. There will be some pieces that don't have any knots, and then some that have multiple knots, or cracks, or different defects. So this is fun. This is my favorite type of building. I like making ugly things beautiful, I guess is the best way I can put it. The more knots, the more cracks, the more of a challenge it is for me. And it gives the piece more character, in my opinion. And I love it. So here we go. So once I have the tops and the door fronts figured out, I'll go through the rest of the lumber and cut it up into its specific parts. And here are all 4 of the end tables. So next step is to plane them down, put a straight edge on them, and then I can glue them up into panels. All right, back to working on the end tables. Here I'm planing down the 2-inch lumber to make the legs. I'm getting them flat so that I can run it on my jointer then, so that I can get a straight edge and then run it through the table saw to get a square piece of stock. I didn't actually get a shot of running them through the jointer, so now I'm running them through the table saw to get them down to rough width. Final dimension will be a 1.5-inch square, but I cut them down to 1 5/8 square just to account for any bending that may occur as I'm cutting them off of these wide boards. I also planed down all of the stock for the tops and shelves, and now I'm filling all the cracks and knots in both those and the leg pieces. So I just set up a little assembly line here in the basement and pouring black epoxy into all those crevices. Using this syringe really helps get in deep there. And then I'll have to come back every hour or so for the rest of the day, or until all the cracks won't take anymore. And then it takes 3 days for all of that to cure. All right, now that all the epoxy is cured, all the knots and cracks are all filled, next step is to run them through the planer again to get the surfaces flat. When pouring epoxy, there's always overflow and spills, of course. So we're just getting the surfaces flat again, and we're bringing it down to final thickness, which is 3/4 inch. Now I'm running them through the jointer to get a straight edge, so then I can run them through the table saw to get 2 straight edges. And then I can glue them up into panels. There are a total of 16 panels that I'm gluing up. 12 of them have 4 boards, and 4 of them have 2 boards. This will make up the sides and back to 2 of them, and then the tops and shelves for all of them. So now I'm just getting a straight edge on the other side, and then I can start gluing them all up. And that takes a couple days too, because I only got a certain amount of clamps. This is panel number 2. So we glue the edges and then lay them down, squeeze them together, clamp them from top and bottom, just so it doesn't warp as it's drying, and on to the next one. In between glue ups, I worked on the legs, getting them down to final thickness, which is 1.5 inches. So first I set the table saw to 1 9/16 inch, run it through once, turn it 90 degrees, run it through again. Then I would set the table saw to 1.5, and then turn them 90 degrees, run them through 90 degrees, run them through again. And that would ensure they were 1.5 inches square. So this was a pretty boring week for the end tables. We got a lot of sanding done. All the panels, all the pieces. Spent a couple days sanding and sanding and sanding and sanding and sanding and sanding. But it is nice to see the end result. So in between sanding, I decided to mock up one of these cabinets just to see what it was going to look like and make sure everything was coming together correctly. So I just used a bunch of clamps to clamp it all together. And it's a bit wonky, but it gives me a good idea of how I'm going to put it together and how it's going to look. If you can visualize it without all those clamps sticking out everywhere. This afternoon I was working on putting an edge profile on all of the pieces. This is just a slight chamfer. The piece that I made for these clients last year had this same profile, and it just looks so cool. I'm really looking forward to seeing these finished. Today I'm starting on the joinery, and right now I'm putting in what's called mortises into all of the legs and all of the side pieces. This tool is specifically designed to make these mortises. It's called a domino joiner, and then you buy these dominoes that fit into the mortises and join everything together. Right now I'm just dry fitting everything, just to make sure that it's all gonna go together correctly and look good. But after I get everything stained, I will glue all of this together. So that's the back, and then the sides, and then the front legs. Now I don't have the fronts done yet because that's gonna be a different type of joinery. And look at that. My math was right. And now this machine is putting pocket holes in the backs of all of the front pieces. This will allow me to just screw these pieces into the sides. It basically just drills a hole at an angle so I can connect a butt joint with screws. So this morning I'm measuring out for the shelf and the bottom of these cabinets. So I put them together upside down, and now I can measure the actual dimensions of the board that goes in here and in here. Coming together pretty nicely though. So now I'm cutting down the shelves to their final width. And I did this process before for the side panels and the back panels before I cut out the mortises. I just didn't show it. And then I used this big sled that I made for the table saw to cut them down to final length. This sled is the best jig I've ever made. I use it for just about everything I make. This allows me to get a perfect 90-degree corner on all sides so that everything is square when I go to put it together. I originally made this to cut out cabinet pieces, so it needed to be quite large. It gives plenty of stability when you got an 8-foot by 24-inch piece of plywood that you need cut in half. And because storage is limited in my shop, I hooked up this pulley system to store it on the ceiling. It's a bit wonky, but it works just fine. I'm not at all concerned that someday it's going to drop on my head. And now I'm putting pocket holes in the bottoms of the shelves. And now all the pieces are getting a final sand before staining. This final sanding goes pretty quick. The first sanding takes so long because you're trying to get off all the saw marks and all the glue that's squeezed out when you're gluing up panels and stuff. So then this final sanding is just a quick once over to get it a little smoother. Morning. It's a bit of a mess in here. I had to clear out the paint room to make room for all of this. It's staining time, but I ran out of stain. The order didn't come in when it was supposed to, so now it's a waiting game. But I can make the doors and drawers and drawer fronts. So that's what we're doing this morning. I just put the chamfer on those. Those are the door frames. Now we got the shaper out, ready to start making the grooves in the frames, and then the door panels themselves. This is where things get really cool. This shaper is quite the beast. It's got these pretty sizable bits that spin at a high rate of speed, and it carves out large chunks of wood in one pass. So right now I'm shaping the pieces for the rails and stiles, which is the frame of the door. It's carving out a groove in the middle of the side of that piece of wood. And then it's a bit of a process to change the bits in this beast too. Once I change these out, then I can make the mating pieces to the parts that I just made. And once I have it calibrated, then I can use this sled to carve out the ends of these pieces. It'll all make sense in a minute here. So now we have grooves in all the pieces, and then you can see those little tabs that just fit in there. And then you just put it together. I'm just dry fitting it right now, obviously, just to make sure that it goes together. It's a tight fit, and that's going to work. There, we got a door almost. Now for the panels. Like I said, this thing is a beast. It's got so many cool features. So now we're shaping the panels. And that thing that's on top is called a power feeder. It's got rollers that will help push the piece through the machine. And it keeps the piece flat on the table when it's going through. It also keeps your hands away from the high-speed bits. And there we have a panel. So cool. This is final dry fit, just to make sure it all goes together. Looks great. And it does look great. I love these doors so much. And now for the drawer fronts. Here I'm carving out a recess in the side pieces for the panel to fit. See there? And then we'll bring it over to the shaper after a bit change. And then I'll carve out the decorative profile on what will be the front of this piece. It's a nice little step down with a round over. And here we're at the table saw again with my miter jig. This is just creating a picture frame, basically, is what I'm doing for these drawer fronts. Picture frame with a panel behind it. See, those go together like that. And then the panel will recess into the back of it. All right, let's put these things together.
All right, so the glue up portion of this assembly is all done. So now I've got the pocket screws to do. So this will go here-ish, and then this is the part that goes right here. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stick this in, and then we're gonna tip this over. So then this goes in, not at an angle. So we got that in like that. So then I'm going to measure and set that, and then I can determine where this goes. Then I'm going to throw a clamp on it, and we throw a screw in it. Then we're going to bring this back down. I'm going to make it so that the top of this, the other side of this, is flush with the top of this. And then I'll screw that in. The measurement of this, which should be the same on each side, it is there, as is over here. Just going to clamp that so that doesn't move while I screw it in. All right, just like that, and the door goes here. These serve two purposes. One is to keep these sides straight, and two is so that I can screw the top on. All right, everything's ready for finish. The tops aren't connected yet because those I'll do separately. Just makes it easier for finishing. But yeah, we're almost there.
So then I brought everything back in the paint room and sprayed a water-based polyurethane. I didn't film that because I don't want to ruin my camera. So then we'll just skip ahead to attaching all the hardware. Here we're putting on the hinges and the pull on the door. Then we'll install the door. I use those shims that I made with the 3D printer. I probably could have put this on a level surface. That would have made things easier, but you know, it still worked. I'm drilling out the holes and screwing the door on. I also screwed on a magnet latch to keep the door shut. And then we attached the top. Flipped it over, measured to make sure it's square on there, and then we just screw in from those pieces that I screwed on earlier. And then installing the drawer slides. I got a spacer there so that each slide is set to the same height on both sides. And then installing the other piece on the drawer. Moment of truth. Perfect. And then just attaching the drawer front. I'll screw that in from the back. I didn't get a good angle of that, so I don't show that. Here they are, complete. These are so beautiful. I love the detail of the drawers and the doors especially. When we redo our kitchen, I'm making our doors like those. Here's in the client's house. They hadn't moved the old ones out yet, so I just grouped them together here and got a shot. They absolutely loved them, and I hope you liked watching how I made them. Check you later.